Well, we've already tackled a big part of the newest entitlement, namely Obamacare. And as you know, in the tax bill, we eliminated the individual mandate and a lot of other reforms involved with that. And we're still chipping away on a regulatory basis to reduce the burdens and the inefficiencies of that. We're not for state-run. We're not for single-payer health care. So that was the first tackle. We've also trying very hard to deal with a lot of workfare issues, very important part of the president's agenda, where we had some very good reforms in the 90s with Republicans and Democrats, Gingrich and
under Clinton. Yeah.
Right. Very good reforms on welfare, for example. Work requirements, eligibility requirements. Unfortunately, much, if not all of that was undone in the last 20 years. I can be bipartisan here, Republicans and Democrats, so we're trying to patch that up again. Food stamps still near record, where unemployment has fallen so much, things like that. So yeah, we're going there, the smaller entitlements. As far as the larger entitlements, I think everybody's going to look at that probably next year. I don't want to be specific. I don't want to get ahead of our own budgeting, but we'll get there. But I agree, we have to be tougher on spending. People are quick to blame, deficits on tax cuts. Well, I don't buy that. Tax cuts promote growth and wages. Revenues come in. Federal, state, and local revenues come in. We're going to run deficits of about 4 to 5% of GDP the next year or two. Okay. I'd rather it were lower, but it's not a catastrophe. It's just not the biggest thing in the world. Going down the road, of course, we'd like to slim that down as much as possible, and we will work at it. But I will say, as I always do, the single biggest factor affecting the budget in general and these macro numbers on deficits and debt is the rate of economic growth. If you grow slowly for long periods of time, you're going to have greater deficits. If you grow rapidly, you're going to have lesser deficits. It's true for federal government and state and local governments. Growth solves a lot of problems. So, glad you asked. Our policies are aimed at growth and prosperity.
You mentioned bipartisan efforts, and I say this a little tongue-in-cheek, but bipartisan efforts seem to be Republicans in Congress working with this administration. What happens if the Democrats actually take control of the House and or the Senate? What happens to any of your plans at that point?
Well, I don't know. I don't want to get too political on this story, but I understand that there's a risk. I'm assuming nothing here right now. I'm not here to forecast politically. But I would just say this. Given the fact that we've emerged into this economic boom, if you will, it would be a shame if efforts were made to unravel the policies or overturn the policies. Okay? And I think that argument is going to figure very heavily in the November elections. The success of the economy and the success of the policies. And I think it would be great disservice to Americans if we overturn those policies. All right? I don't want to go much further than that, but not surprisingly, we got here. As I said, I still think the boom is the biggest story of 2018. There was a time, Marie cited a book I wrote many, many years ago, not so long ago, a year or two back, I did something called JFK and the Reagan Revolution. JFK, the Democrat, right, was the first post-war supply-side tax cutter. And it worked beautifully. 4 or 5% growth, virtually no inflation. 20 years later, it got off the rails. Ronald Reagan came in, a former Democrat, and emulated the JFK tax cut. Reagan gave him credit for it. Now, that was a different Democratic Party. I get that. Doesn't mean it couldn't happen again. Maybe there's a role model there. I just, from whatever source, I don't want to get too political, Becky, but I just don't overturn the good work that's been done. Don't overturn, for example, the explosion in blue-collar jobs. Don't overturn the increase in confidence. Don't overturn the capital that's flowing into the United States. You know, it's working. It's working.
Is that an admission that tax cut 2.0, which would make these tax cuts permanent, is not going to happen before November?
I don't think so, but I think it's, you know, making the personal tax cuts permanent is a very good idea. And there's some assorted savings accounts in there. I think Kevin Brady is exactly right. I think there may be a vote. I'm not 100% sure. There may be a vote on that. No, I don't think it'll pass. It'll get through the whole Congress. But it's a good message. I think it's a good message. And I think we can do a lot more on tax reform going, you know, down the road.
The Joint Committee on Taxation has looked at Tax Cut 2.0 and said that it will add over 10 years something like $657 billion to the deficit. They also say that the deficit would be $1.8 trillion under that law instead of $1.5 trillion under current law by the year, I think, 2028. Do you quibble with those numbers?
Always.
That was a setup.
I mean, even the 1.5 trillion, which is the sort of agreed upon, as I said, with the new revisions in the nominal GDP baseline, the real GDP baseline, the revenue baseline, we've already paid probably, even by CBO's estimates, roughly 2/3 of that whole tax cut. So, you know, one of the wonders of Washington is these models, the debate about static versus dynamic scoring. And that debate may never be settled. But, you know, when candidate Trump spoke to the New York Economics Club, I was sitting right behind him that day as a board member, but obviously I contributed to that plan. And he declared a 4% national goal for economic growth. Okay? I just thought it was wonderful. There was a debate inside the campaign, and the 4%ers won. So then I got 4, and now he wants 5. But that's a good thing to shoot for. And I say nothing but good. If we reach that goal, nothing but good will come of it. Nothing. You can't grow it fast enough. It's just a great thing. It helps everybody. Helps everything. Not just these numbers. It helps prosperity and confidence and jobs. Every American working. What is there, 155 million some odd Americans working right now, and the number is rising nicely. They're all benefiting. Everyone benefits from that kind of growth and prosperity and economic health. And paychecks are getting fatter. How can that be bad? How can that possibly be bad? How can that be bad for budgets? We're giving more revenues. Can't be bad. I'm sorry.